What if the space race was never just about reaching the moon? What if every launch, every rocket, and every flag planted in the sky was also a message to the world? We are stronger, smarter, and more advanced than you. Because behind the astronauts and the giant rockets was something much bigger: politics, propaganda, military strategy, and a battle for global influence. Today, we usually remember the space race as a thrilling competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. And it was that, but it was also a carefully staged contest for power on Earth. Space was never just space, it was a stage. In the Cold War, nuclear weapons made direct war too dangerous. So the US and the USSR fought in other ways, through technology, ideology, and prestige. If a country could launch satellites, animals, and eventually humans into orbit, it proved something far more important than scientific ability. It proved industrial strength, military potential, and national confidence. That is because rocket technology and missile technology are closely related. A rocket powerful enough to send a satellite into orbit could also, in theory, send a nuclear warhead across the planet. So when the Soviets launched Sputnik in 1957, it was not just a scientific first, it was a geopolitical shock. People in the United States heard that beep-beep signal from space and realized, if the Soviets can do that, what else can they do? That fear pushed the US government to pour huge amounts of money into science education, aerospace research, and eventually NASA. And here is the useful part: this is a classic example of how pressure from competition can accelerate innovation. Governments and institutions often move faster when they feel strategically threatened. That is why the space race produced not just rockets, but advances in computer systems, materials science, communications, and tracking technology. For example, the need to calculate complex flight paths helped improve early computers. The need to keep astronauts alive in extreme conditions pushed progress in life support systems and miniaturized electronics. Even things we now take for granted, like weather satellites and GPS-related technologies, grew out of this larger push into space. But there was also a huge propaganda side. The Soviets wanted to show that communism could build the future. The Americans wanted to show that democracy and capitalism could outcompete it. Each successful mission was presented as proof that one system was better than the other. That is why public moments mattered so much. Yuri Gagarin's flight in 1961 was a massive symbolic victory for the USSR, then. When John F. Kennedy announced the goal of landing a man on the moon before the decade was out, it was not only because the moon was scientifically interesting. It was because the US needed a dramatic win, and the moon landing worked perfectly as a political message. It said, we can mobilize a nation, solve impossible engineering problems, and reach somewhere no one has reached before. So how did politics shape the race behind the scenes? Money flowed where leaders saw strategic value, agencies competed for funding, successes were broadcast globally, failures were sometimes hidden or softened, and every mission was judged not just by what it discovered but by what it signaled. That is the mechanism. Technology becomes political when it can change perception. If the world believes you are winning, your influence grows. If your own citizens believe progress is possible, national morale rises. If allies trust your strength, they stay close. So the hidden politics behind the space race was not a side story, it was the story. The rockets were real, the science was real, but the meaning attached to them was deeply political. In the end, the race to space was also a race to define the future. And maybe that is why it still feels so fascinating today. Because when humans looked up at the stars, they were not just asking, what is out there? They were also asking, who are we and who gets to lead? The hidden politics behind the space race explained is just one small part of the space race. If you are interested, our full Free the Space Race course is linked in the description.